We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we are looking at Predator vs. Wolverine Issue 1. This is a 2023 miniseries from Marvel Comics, written by Benjamin Percy, art by Ken Lashley on the present day storyline. Young Wolverine section was drawn by Greg Land with Jay Leaston on inks, and the Team X storyline was drawn by Andrea DeVito. Color art by Juan Fernandez on President Day and Team X, and Frank Diamarta on the Young Wolverine story. Letters by VC's Corey Pettit. I have the variant cover, which appears to be an homage to Incredible Hulk number 340, and that was done by Mike McCone, with Rochelle Rosenberg on colors. So we start off with a bookend of the modern day where Wolverine has a big chunk missing out of his arm, and he's running through the woods being hunted by the Predator. Then this takes us back in time to 1900, where young Wolverine had an encounter with a Predator as well. In that storyline, he was hired to rescue a kid, but it turned out there was no kid, and this was just some people getting revenge on each other. And the Predator was there to take some trophies, and he came across various humans and skinned them. And the guy that hired Wolverine is a little unnerved by the whole thing, and Wolverine has to duke it out with the Predator, and things do not really go the way that either party thought it was going to. But years later, Team X is on a mission, and they encounter the Predator as well, but there's more than one of them. Now, all three stories were pretty interesting, but two of them were just sort of teases. The main story is Wolverine as a young person, still with his stupid bone claws, which I never liked, dealing with the Predator in 1900. The Team X one looks like it's going to be much more based in the jungle, like the original Predator movie, whereas the modern one looks like they're running through the Canadian wilderness. I'd have to say it was actually pretty entertaining. It was a little slow in parts, but overall I didn't hate it or anything. I actually thought it was pretty good. The art's pretty solid throughout the book. Not the greatest art I've ever seen, but definitely not the worst Marvel art I've ever seen. The modern day is probably the best as far as art went. The Greg Land stuff was fine, and the Team X stuff was okay, but the book comes in at a staggering $8 cover price, and it is not worth that. It was a fun read, and there's a fair amount of pages here, and I like the cover I got. It just is hard to really justify $8 for a regular comic when this could have been put in perfect binding, so it would at least have nice square bound format with a slightly nicer cover quality. So it's hard to justify the price for a regular issue. If this had been a DC book, like the Batman Gargoyle of Gotham book that came out the same week, which was $7, and it had almost as many pages and was square bound with a nicer quality cover. So I would say if you're gonna pick this up, don't pay the price they're asking for it. Try and get it a couple bucks cheaper. $5 would have been the better price point unless they had put it in better binding, and I'm real disappointed about that. But aside from the price, the package was okay. I think Benjamin Percy is generally overrated, and there's a lot of big panels in here that are clearly just designed to take up some room. So you might want to just wait for the trade paperback on this one, especially with the price being what it is. I would say absolutely wait for the trade, because you're going to pay about the same amount for a higher quality product in the end. But so far it is pretty entertaining, and I will likely pick up issue 2. I'm just not going to do it at cover price. That's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods, and as always, we hope to see you on the next one.
We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we are looking at Predator vs. Wolverine Issue 2. This is a mini-series from Marvel Comics in 2023, written by Benjamin Percy, art by Ken Lashley. For the present day, Team X was by Andrea DeVito, and the Weapon X section was by Hayden Sherman. Color art was present day in Team X by Juan Fernandez, and a Weapon X section by Alex Guimarães, lettered by VC's Corey Pettit, cover by Marco Cicchetto. The cover's okay, but It really didn't do much for me. I thought it was a little weak, actually. It looks more like a bad indie cover. Wolverine's face looks a little weird. The artist has problems with facial hair, that's pretty obvious. And Maverick has really thick thighs. It really doesn't do the interior art justice. So we start off with the modern day, which is easily the best art and has some great panels, where Wolverine is trying to let his healing factor kick in before he faces off with the Predator again. And he gets himself into a pretty scary situation where we're left with the cliffhanger, and then it jumps back to Team X, where it is very similar to the first Predator movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger, where the team is trying to face off with 5 Predators. Now, they are superpowered people, so they do have, like, mutant powers and big guns, and Wolverine has a trinket that he kept from the old days when he fought that Predator the first time. Now, Predators appear to live very, very long because this is the same Predator he faced off with in early 1900. So he tries to use a weapon of the Predators against them, manages to injure one, and some of the other team try to take on the Predators as well, but they end up getting either hurt or killed in the process. Now, Maverick gets really badly injured, and Logan has to carry him into this ruins, and they end up having to team up with the guys they were there to kill, and the Predators have a really cool Captain America shield effect they can do. It was a pretty fun adventure, and then we jump to Alberta, Canada, which is the Weapon X facility years later, and a Predator is coming there to find Logan. I thought that art really didn't work very well for the Predator or the humans. It just has bad proportionality. The Predator has a very giant head at the end of that story. Looks like he's wearing a mascot helmet. So I didn't much care for that art, but the story has been very, very good. The colors are pretty solid on all 3 stories, but the art from Ken Lashley is easily the best. I would definitely check that artist out on other books. It'd be nice if he did more work like this because there's some really good detailing in there. And the work by Andrea DeVito was okay. It wasn't the greatest, it wasn't the best. There seems to be a little bit of problems with the Predator's face that proved to be challenging, but otherwise it was passable. I didn't love it, didn't hate it. I would say it was good art, but it wasn't the best I've ever seen. It wasn't mind-blowing or anything like that. Lashley's art, however, is probably some of the best I've seen from Marvel in a long time. But overall, I thought it was a lot of fun. This was a pretty interesting book. Thankfully, this cover price on this one was a little cheaper at $6, and sadly, that's pretty high, but if you want good art, I guess you're gonna have to pay for it because Marvel knows they're churning out crap at $4, so they're trying to get you to pay more money. And generally speaking, I'm not a giant fan of Benjamin Percy's writing, but this is actually pretty good, and I'm looking forward to the next issue. So hopefully he won't let me down again and actually produce consistently good work. So I have high hopes for that he's actually going to maintain the quality that we've seen so far. So strong recommendation on this one. I'm shocked that this book is good, let alone as good as it is. So if you get a chance to read this, so far it's really solid book. But that's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one.
We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we are looking at Predator vs. Wolverine issue 3. This is a mini-series from Marvel Comics that started in 2023, written by Benjamin Percy, art by Ken Lashley on the present day story, Hayden Sherman on the Weapon X story, and Kai Zama on the Miramasa era. Colors by Juan Fernandez on the present day and Alex Cabarez on the other 2 stories. Letters by VC's Corey Pettit. Cover by Marco Cicchetto. Assistant editor Lindsay Kohick. Edited by Sarah Brunstead. So we start off with the present day where Wolverine is trying to escape a seeming death trap, and we learn a little bit more about the setup of that as the issue progresses, like how it came to be where it's at, which is back in the wilds of Canada, where it all started. And then we jump to the Weapon X era, where we see an unconscious Wolverine being examined by the Predator who broke into the facility. Wolverine is effectively mindless at this point, so he does attack the Predator and gets responded to accordingly. And once the Predator understands that that his bones are coated with adamantium, he becomes something of a prize, so he drags Wolverine out to try and carve him up. But Wolverine, being a military asset for both the Americans and the Canadians in their joint Weapon X project, the military does respond and tries to take out the spacecraft, but that doesn't really work out the way they think it's going to, and Wolverine has to find his own way out. And it's hinted at that the Predator technology they were able to salvage was used in the Weapon X program. And then we get kind of the setup for what appears to be next issue's story, where Wolverine is at his samurai training when a Predator shows up there. So the same one. It's got a grudge. This has become personal. And it appears to be going a little bit more low-tech, maybe, wearing a skull mask, which is kind of cool. Overall, I thought the story is pretty good. The art from Ken Lashley is hands down the best. I think Kai Zama's got a pretty good handle on things, too. It's a little bit of a sketchier style, but it does seem to work. But the main story of the Weapon X era by Hayden Sherman's art, I really did not like that art style. It's just a little too over the top, and the proportions look a little off sometimes. And most of the time, Wolverine doesn't even have flesh on his head, which I don't know how he survives without a brain stem of any kind and how he resurrects that. But they've kind of made Wolverine unkillable in a ludicrous way these days, and I blame a lot of that on the Civil War era, because they made it so that he could basically get nuked and he would still regrow everything, and I find that very, very bizarre. So they don't really explain how he can walk around with no brain and barely any flesh, but you just kind of have to roll with it. And I think the artist probably could have done a little bit more to make it look like he had some battle damage on part of his skull, as opposed to so much of the flesh missing that it looks a little bit goofy and silly, because as it is, it looks like there's no muscle tissue holding his spine to his skull area, and it just doesn't look like his skull would stay attached. So I thought that art was kind of weak, but overall the story's pretty solid, and like I said, Lashley's art really saves it. That's amazing. And I'm not familiar offhand with Kai Zama, but the art was pretty solid on that story as well. So hopefully that'll continue to be pretty good. There's a few panels that look a little rough, but not enough that I'm like morally offended or anything like that. So a decent read. Is it worth $6? No, wait for the trade paperback. It's a fun read, absolutely. It's definitely some of the better stuff at Marvel, especially involving a mutant, but it's overpriced for what you're getting. It's not much thicker than a comic book was when they were $1.25, and now they want $6 for it. That seems a bit steep for what you're getting, especially when a lot of the art really just doesn't hold up. So I would say try and get it in trade paperback. It seems like it's going to be worth reading that way, and you'll probably get a better quality of paper and formatting that you can put on a bookshelf. Will these be worth something? It's hard to say, but so far I'm actually pretty impressed with the storyline, but this issue had pretty weak art, so the price point is just a little too high for me, and I would be more comfortable paying $3 to $4 for it. That's kind of unlikely to happen, so I would say wait for the trade. The Marco Cicchetto cover's pretty cool. I liked it overall. I thought it was pretty solid, but still doesn't justify the expense. That's gonna do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods, and as always, we hope to see you on the next one.
We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we're looking at Predator vs. Wolverine issue 4. This is the final installment of the miniseries from Marvel Comics, written by Benjamin Percy, art by Ken Lashley on the present day story, Kai Zama on the Muramasa era, and Gavin Guidry on the Westchester era. Color art by Juan Fernandez on present day, Alex Camarez on the Muramasa era, and Matthew Wilson on the Westchester era. Letters by VC's Corey Pettit, cover by Marco Cicchetto. Assistant editor was Lindsay Kowick, edited by Sarah Brunstad. Cover's pretty good. It reminds me of Havoc and Wolverine, but it is action-packed. It's supposed to be kind of abstract, so I'm fine with it. But we start off at the present day where Wolverine and the Predator are finally facing off, and it's pretty brutal right away. We learn how Wolverine got his shoulder injury, and then we jump to the past to Miramasa's estate and Wolverine facing off with the Predator there. That is a fairly brief story because they do get interrupted. And then we are over at the Westchester estate of the Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters many years later, and the Predator shows up to attack the school. Wolverine makes sure to try and get the innocent people out of the way, but they insist on being helpful, and the Predator pulls back mostly due to their interference, and he's obviously losing as well because he was expecting really to fight one person and not a whole team of mutants. Then we finally get some resolution, and it's pretty brutal the way the story ends. It's well done. The Ken Lashley art is fantastic, and so is Kiaizawa's art. I think both styles clash a little bit. They're very, very different styles, but they're both really well done, pretty well detailed. I think Zama needs to work a little bit on faces. Wolverine looks a bit silly at times in the face, but otherwise, pretty solid art style. The Gavin Guidry art, I think, needs some work. It's a completely different style than the other two, but it often looks very ill-defined, especially on faces. Wolverine's face particularly. Nightcrawler looks okay, and Rogue looks okay too for the most part, but it's a much more cartoonish style of art that really doesn't seem to match the tone of the book. As far as the way the book ends, I think it was a fitting end to the series, and it wrapped it up pretty well. There's always the possibility of a sequel here, but this one takes place over more than 100 years, so it'd be kind of hard to compete with that on such a epic scale. If they had done one that was a smaller story taking place over a shorter period of time, much like Batman vs. Predator, I think that'd be an interesting story too, but this was done pretty well. Like I said, the art doesn't always make a whole lot of sense because the styles look contradictory at times, but they're supposed to be different settings. It sort of works and it sort of doesn't. Overall though, I would recommend this. I thought it was an interesting story. These single issues are really overpriced. This was $6, and I think that for what you're getting, it's a good story, but it's very, very overpriced. So I would try and get the trade paperback instead of hunting down the single issues unless you can find them really cheap. You're more likely to save money by buying it in a nicer quality format. But I was thoroughly entertained. I thought these were a lot of fun to read, and I would recommend them. Unfortunately though, it seems that each issue had one storyline that was perpetually weaker in art. Thankfully, the storyline does save it, and it is a pretty good work by Benjamin Percy, which really surprised me. He tends to be very hit and miss with Marvel, so I didn't have high expectations, but I'm glad I read this. I thought it was a lot of fun. If you're looking for a mutant book that isn't some horrible Krakoan era nightmare mess, this is probably for you, and it should appeal to both fans of Wolverine and the Predator. That's gonna do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods, and as always, we hope to see you on the next one.